Today, we're going to talk about Trump testing positive for coronavirus, who else has contracted it, Biden's response to Trump putting his life in danger, and what would happen with the election if Trump was no longer able to run. I also speak with Trump's niece, Mary Trump, about his positive test result, her lawsuit against him, and his performance in the last debate. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen, and you're listening to No Lie. First off, I have an exciting announcement, and that is that I'll be live streaming Wednesday's VP debate between Kamala Harris and Mike Pence on YouTube and giving a real-time fact check, and my co-host for the pre-show will be Mary Trump. So in addition to our interview in this episode, visit my YouTube channel, Brian Tyler Cohen, go to the pinned video at the top of my page and click Set Reminder. Super easy. This way you don't miss me and Mary Trump or any of what promises to be a really, really good debate. I'll be starting at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Okay, so Donald Trump has tested positive for coronavirus, which on one hand is shocking because he's ostensibly the safest person in the world, but also completely unsurprising because his strategy over the last 7 months has been to willfully downplay the severity of this virus. This is a guy who not only trafficked in reckless behavior, but has been the epicenter of it. It was Donald Trump who claimed that it was contained, that it goes away with the heat, that it affects virtually nobody. He spent months politicizing masks, the single most effective tool we have to contain the virus. He fomented protests against stay-at-home orders by tweeting out demands to liberate states, Michigan, Minnesota, Virginia, and then that led to spikes among the attendees. He has single-handedly done more to exacerbate this crisis than anyone or anything else in the country. So I guess I shouldn't be surprised that he got it. I should be surprised that it took this long. So as of this recording, Trump is hospitalized at Walter Reed Medical Center. Here's the quick timeline of what we know. So Hope Hicks had begun feeling sick on Wednesday while in Minnesota for Trump's rally. She started to self-isolate on Air Force One on the way back to Washington, which presumably Trump knew about. Hope Hicks then tested positive on Thursday, and yet, despite the fact that Trump traveled with her on both Tuesday and Wednesday, he opted to go to a fundraiser with some donors in New Jersey because money. He then flew back to D.C. on Thursday night. The media then announced that Hope Hicks had tested positive for coronavirus, at which point Trump reportedly took a test, and shortly thereafter he announced that he was positive too. As for his status, it's generally unclear because, shockingly, there's just a little bit of a credibility gap for this White House. An example being that on Saturday, Trump's doctor, White House physician, Navy Commander Sean Coley, was purposefully evasive when it came to whether Trump had been given supplemental oxygen. But he did paint a rosy picture on how well Trump was doing. But then a few minutes later, a source came on record saying, quote, "The president's vitals over the last 24 hours were very concerning, and the next 48 hours will be critical in terms of his care. We're still not on a clear path to a full recovery." That source was later identified as Trump's own chief of staff, Mark Meadows. Trump reportedly got pissed off that Meadows gave that information and started recording videos of himself purporting to feel fine and reviewing documents, which all sounds very real and legitimate. Now, if it feels like the information that we're getting is conflicting and purposefully vague, that's because it is. Like, consider too, the White House never announced that Hope Hicks was sick. Bloomberg News reported it. So who knows if we'd have ever known? And if we didn't know about her, who knows if we'd have known about Trump? But I guess we shouldn't be surprised that a White House that let this virus explode because they opted for a strategy of denialism and cover-ups would then employ a strategy of denialism and cover-ups. Now, aside from Trump, as of this recording, others testing positive include Melania, Hope Hicks, Kellyanne Conway, Chris Christie, Trump's campaign manager Bill Stepien, his personal assistant Nick Luna, Republican Senators Mike Lee, Tom Tillis, Ron Johnson, all of them tested positive. And it looks like the place where the virus was spread was the event celebrating the nomination of Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court. They were celebrating the nomination of a Supreme Court justice who would strike down the ACA, the only law protecting 20 million Americans' health coverage during the very pandemic that they themselves fell victim to. I would say it's karma, but it's not. It's just basic cause and effect. It is a group of people who pretended that the virus didn't apply to them because they're Republicans and they believe in freedom and liberty and they won't be told what to do. So they congregated in close quarters and they took zero precautions and they caught the virus. It's not karma, it's just negligence and stupidity. By the way, that right there is why this pandemic is out of control in the first place. Because the people charged with actually running this country and the people screaming the loudest for everything to open back up are the ones who couldn't manage to not congregate together and crawl all over each other. They just needed to throw themselves a super spreader parade to celebrate a pro-life judge who they hope will rule to strip healthcare away from 20 million Americans during a pandemic that's already killed 200,000 people, just like the rest of her pro-life party wants. And these are the people in charge. Meanwhile, I haven't left my house in 7 months. We've missed school and weddings and birthdays and holidays, funerals. There is not one of you out there watching who hasn't missed something. You can't begin to count the number of sacrifices that Americans have made and continue to make. And this is why. Because a small number of irresponsible assholes hold super spreader events and prolong the virus for the rest of us who just want to be safe, who just want to be responsible, who want to do the right thing to protect everyone else. But hey, at least Amy Coney Barrett got her party, right? The fact is that while the attention right now is on Trump contracting the virus, the American people have been dealing with this for months. This isn't serious now that Trump contracted it. It's been serious since we lost the first American back in February. It's been serious every day since more than 210,000 Americans have died. It was serious when Trump was fomenting protests in Michigan and Minnesota and Virginia, causing cases to spike and putting everyone who came into contact with the newly infected people at risk. It's been dangerous for doctors and nurses and hospital staff who dealt with surges of cases caused by people opting not to wear masks because the president didn't. I get that he's sick and I might sound callous, but I've spoken before about how my mom and dad are both healthcare workers. The amount of stress that I've endured, while they continue to go to the hospital and to see patients and sick people in the middle of a pandemic, their lives were in exponentially more danger because Donald Trump single-handedly exacerbated this crisis. So I'm sorry if I'm not overly sympathetic that he caught the virus that he himself failed to contain. Every single person who Donald Trump convinced not to wear a mask infected countless more people. Every person who Donald Trump convinced to protest stay-at-home orders infected countless more people. And those people spread it to others, and there wasn't adequate testing to show it because that wasn't Trump's priority, and there wasn't contact tracing because that wasn't Trump's priority. His behavior exploded this virus, and that put my family's lives at risk. So if you're looking for sympathy from me, you're not going to get it. I don't want Donald Trump to die. I hope he recovers, honestly. I want him to live to see Joe Biden demolish him in this election. I want him to live to get indicted for his criminal behavior. I want him to answer for his campaign finance violations and tax fraud. I don't want to see anyone die from this. But while he's in that hospital, I hope he realizes that it was his own gross negligence, his lies and obfuscations and downplaying that put millions of other Americans in the position he's in right now. I don't want him to die, but I hope he realizes how responsible he is for the 210,000 Americans who did. He won't, but he should. We see it, though. The American people see it, and that's what matters. And by the way, even Chris Wallace was pissed off. Here's Chris on Fox News after it became known that Trump may have already had coronavirus when he showed up at the debate that Wallace himself moderated.
And if I could say one thing to all of the people out there watching, forget the politics. This is a public safety health issue. The president of the United States is in the most secure bubble in the world, in the sense that everybody who comes in contact with him has to take a test, and he still got it. So wear the damn mask and follow the science.
Oh my goodness.
That's the key takeaway.
Yeah, I think Chris Wallace finally realized the danger that his own network's done over the last 7 months while they've been busy carrying water for Trump, whose mission it was to obfuscate the facts in the middle of a deadly pandemic. And by the way, Wallace's anger here is justified because the White House is obviously withholding this information, but there's a really good chance that Trump was already infected on Tuesday night when he showed up for the debate. It was up to the campaigns to test the candidates. Why? Because for some reason that I will never understand so long as I shall live, the debate commission decided to use the honor system with this White House, meaning they simply trusted the White House to tell them whether Trump had been tested or not. I have seen more clips of Rudy Giuliani in drag than I have of Donald Trump wearing a mask, but they just trusted the administration to just do the right thing when it came to the virus. Got it. And so not only was Chris Wallace's life put in danger because of the Trump campaign's cavalier behavior, but Biden's was too. They stood 12 feet away from each other for an hour and a half while Trump was belligerently screaming at Joe the whole time. He put Joe Biden's life in immediate danger. Biden is 77 years old. That could be a literal death sentence for him. And yet, you know what Joe said when Trump announced that he tested positive?
Look, I'd like to start by acknowledging, which I'm sure all of you do as well, sending my prayers for the health and safety of the First Lady and President of the United States after they tested positive for COVID-19. My wife Jill and I prayed that they'll make a quick and full recovery. This is not a matter of politics. It's a bracing reminder to all of us that we have to take this virus seriously.
He sent well wishes. That's it. He wished them well. Then his campaign stopped all negative ads for good measure. Meanwhile, that day, October 2nd, the Trump campaign ran ads on Facebook accusing Biden of wearing an earpiece at the debate with a doctored photo. That day, that's the difference between these candidates. For comparison, you know what Trump said when Hillary Clinton got pneumonia on the campaign trail in 2016? He said this.
But here's a woman. She's supposed to fight all of these different things. And she can't make it 15 feet to her car. Give me a break. Give me a break. Give me a break. She's home resting right now. She's getting ready for her next speech, which is going to be about 15 minutes, and it's going to be in 2 or 3 days.
Mocked her at a rally. So when you fast forward to today and you have Republicans, right on cue, rediscovering their moral outrage and clutching their pearls that we're not all coming together as Americans to hope and pray for dear Donald Trump, it's because we don't even have to guess what he would do if the tables were turned, because we already have proof. We know what Donald Trump would do because he literally did it. And even now, his campaign's in the midst of attacking Joe Biden while Trump is in his hospital bed. But you want to know the biggest difference between these two candidates? You want to boil it down to one moment? New reporting just emerged that Joe Biden said he told some governors not to publicly endorse him because he worried their states wouldn't get the support and resources from the federal government needed to fight the coronavirus outbreak. That's the difference. That's the difference. Trump tried to withhold aid to California during the wildfires. He's threatened to withhold aid to New York. He slow-walked aid to Puerto Rico after the hurricane. He constantly punishes blue states and only relents if he can squeeze a compliment out of a governor, which he then turns around to create a campaign ad out of. He does what he needs to do for his ego. Joe Biden did what he needed to do to protect people. That is the difference. Something I've heard a bit about also was the conspiracy theory that Trump might not actually have coronavirus. And they basically go like this. Trump came off of a horrifying debate performance. The New York Times exposed him for paying basically nothing in taxes. His polling's in the toilet. Biden's surging. So Trump concocts this plan where he announces he has coronavirus. The angry tone toward him softens. People become sympathetic toward him. He lays low. After a few days, he emerges cured, totally healthy because, of course, he's genetically superior, announces that he took hydroxychloroquine and that he was right all along. It's a miracle. Biden was wrong. He's owned by China. Trump wins the re-election. I don't buy it for a second. Announcing that you contracted the virus that you failed to contain isn't a winning strategy. And if the debate is any indication, Trump will do anything to make sure that we don't talk about coronavirus. So saying that you contracted it doesn't make any sense. Also, for what? To get the attention off of his scandals? By instead putting the attention on his biggest scandal, which is his failure to contain the virus? Usually if you're trying to distract people, you don't do it by elevating your biggest screw up in office. Keep in mind too, Trump thinks being sick is a sign of weakness. That's why he puts so much energy into trying to convince us that when it comes to genetic superiority, it's him and Dwayne Johnson and then the rest of us. He had a doctor say that he lived to 200. He's not going to subject himself to Walter Reed for fun. So look, no, I don't think that this is some grand conspiracy to get Trump reelected. Trump contracted this virus because despite trying to will into existence his alternate reality, the virus is real, it's contagious, it isn't going to disappear like a miracle, and he was reckless. Add that to the fact that he's 74 years old, he's obese, he's got high blood pressure, high cholesterol, he survives off a diet of McDonald's and ice cream. He thinks that exercise is bad for you, and you have the perfect storm to get sick. And that's exactly what happened. Him catching a virus that he allowed to spread is already damning on its own. I really don't think we need to look for conspiracy theories to make it worse. But there is an unlikely scenario that I do want to address, which is, what if something happens to Trump? What if he gets too sick to continue serving? What if he dies? What happens to the election? So some of it's straightforward, some less so. But here's what we know. If Trump gets too sick to continue serving as president, 25th Amendment offers two routes to transfer power. Section 3 is that Trump himself can transfer power to the vice president through a written declaration, and that would make Pence the acting president. The other, Section 4, is if the vice president and a majority of his cabinet decide that he's unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, they would make that decision on their own, and Pence would immediately become acting president. And that's whether Trump is incapacitated or not, they can make that determination. Now, if something happens to Trump and he can't run, then it becomes less clear. The RNC would have to convene its 168 national members and produce a new nominee, but even if and when they do, because in most states ballots are already printed and voting's already started, a new nominee wouldn't even make it onto those ballots, meaning that it would fall to each of the 50 states to decide how to proceed from there. And most states don't have laws governing what to do in this type of situation. So this might be unsatisfying, but there's really no clear answer here. It would most likely end up in the courts, and it would be nightmarish to say the least. But here's the thing. It shouldn't get anywhere close to that point. The fact is, Trump created such an egregiously dangerous environment that it's no wonder he himself got it. He created the perfect conditions to spread this thing. He fostered a nationwide petri dish that even he, as the most protected person on the face of the earth, couldn't avoid. And the cost of his actions isn't just financial. It's not just ceding our leadership in the international community. We're paying with the lives of our families and friends and coworkers and neighbors. We're paying because one man put his own re-election strategy above the safety of 350 million people. The point is that this administration and the Republican Party more broadly are a living monument to their own mismanagement. They can't keep you safe. They can't even keep themselves safe. And that's something that you need to keep in mind when you're filling out your ballot. To watch my interview with Mary Trump, check out the interviews playlist on my YouTube channel. And again, don't forget to check us both out on Wednesday, October 7th on my YouTube channel at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific before the VP debate. Go to my YouTube page and click Set Reminder next to the VP debate video at the top of the page. Also, please remember to visit votesaveamerica.com. We are now starting to hit registration deadlines, so please register to vote if you haven't done so yet, and verify your registration if you have. You can also find out any other information you need. It is the best one-stop shop we have for all things voting. I'll add a link to Vote Save America in the post description, so please take a few minutes and check it out. That's it for this episode. Talk to you next time.